start.
We're ready for our next presentation now.
Hi everyone, thank you for attending this talk today. My name is Jiang, along with my colleague. Do you want to say your name?
Daniel.
Sorry. Okay. So I'm pleased to present our research project, which is basically about how college students experience and struggle with food insecurity before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this work was basically conducted, as you can see as well. It was conducted under Dr. Tenzina Ahmed, Rosita Ilieva, Jacob Shane, Stacia Reeder, and Charmaine Aleong of the City University of New York, also known as CUNY, and other student researchers Caitlin Chu, Ho-Yen Wong, Anita Yan, and Daniel Lopez also contributed to this project. So our research project was, as I mentioned before, is about food insecurity, which is also known as a state where people experience getting difficulty getting a hold of the healthy, affordable, and culturally appropriate food on a regular basis. So even before the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a huge impact on our lives, community college students already were experiencing food insecurity. And studies from 2019 show that 2 in 3 community college students experience food insecurity on a regular basis. So their struggles with food insecurity matters because it is linked or connected with other problems in their lives as well. For example, the most common 4 problems would be physical health, such as obesity. They're more likely to have lower GPA, struggle to stay in college, or experience mental health problems such as depression or anxiety, and also have financial problems. So the solution to this is that many colleges responded to this issue by offering campus support programs, food programs. So for instance, every City University of New Public Community colleges have those food support programs. However, with the impact on the COVID-19 pandemic, it also has radically changed whether basically the access of how community college students can take advantage of such food support programs. So people who were vulnerable to hunger and food insecurity are basically, so studying students' food insecurity is basically very important, as I mentioned before, because many Americans across the nation have experienced huge increases in food insecurity ever since the COVID-19 pandemic. So as I mentioned before, people who are experiencing the hunger and food insecurity, that is people who identify as parents, lower income, or being a part of the ethnic or racial minority, they're also at the risk of being food insecure. And that's why it's important to understand or learn, or basically, understand why community colleges students are also experiencing that food insecurity. So to learn how community college students are experiencing food insecurity before and during the COVID-19 pandemic, we basically had 2 research questions. The first one was, how did the food insecurity of community college students change as they were compared before and during the COVID-19 pandemic? So 2 things to know. The first thing is the before, we had 2 different groups. The before pandemic group, the students were studied in fall 2019. And then the during pandemic group, students were basically studied in fall 2020. And the second question was, how did students write about their food insecurity before and during the COVID-19 pandemic? So in fall 2019, going back to the before pandemic group, we basically enrolled 545 students to make up that group. And then in fall 2020, we enrolled 299 students to make up the during pandemic group. So as you can see from a quick review of our participant demographics, the average age of our students were 25 to 26. In terms of gender, we significantly recruited more female students than male students, and students were more typically in their second and third year, so we didn't solely look at freshman students, and 2 in 3 students in terms of their ethnicity identified either being African American or Latino. So continuing on with our participant demographics, about 30% of students were reported having a household income of under $20,000, $20,000. while 31% of students on average reported of having a household income of $20,000 to $40,000. So basically, around half of the student population are basically living under or around the official U.S. poverty line, as well as the majority of them reported of being employed. So the only biggest difference between our samples were how often they reported supporting children in their household. So basically, as you can see as well, in our before pandemic group, 22% of the students reported supporting children, while 31% of students in the during pandemic group reported supporting children.
So we reviewed food insecurity from the college students from fall of 2019 to fall of 2020. We didn't see much changes during this time, and this will be beginning of the pandemic and also during the pandemic. There were students we did see an increase in high food security, going from 45% to 48%. So that's more than almost half of the students were more food secure. In students who were low food secure, these are students who were considered having weekly struggles getting access to food. We saw that it was a decrease from 19% in fall 2019 to 70% in fall 2020. Students who were considered very low food security, these are students who had daily struggles getting access to food, saw that it remained the same from 11% in fall 2019 and 11% in fall of 2020. I do ask this question to the audience. Why do you think we didn't see more food insecurity, when there's so much evidence that show that we should be seeing more food insecure students? Good answers. So we saw was, oh, go ahead.
Did not want to admit it. People don't all want to admit
Right.
their particular situation.
Yes, the students could feel some
much
type of
higher on
shame.
campuses than we actually can afford.
Right, so students could feel some type of shame towards being food insecure.
Were there increased programs on campus because of the pandemic that were offering potentially to students, so that supplemented their availability for food?
Right, that could be possibly it. There was a sort of increase as well in certain CUNY schools. The reason that we came up with is that a lot of our students who were food insecure, the highest amount, they probably didn't re-enroll for fall of 2020, meaning that they just couldn't economically afford it. And so the students who were left to take our study were more food secure and more economically advantaged. So to assess for our students' experience with food insecurity, we created 2 narrative prompts. The first one was the Nikki writing prompt, which is basically a student, Nikki, who is suffering from food insecurity. And our sample students had to respond to that by explaining how they could help Nikki with dealing with food insecurity on campus. The next one was a letter to college president. This is addressing your experiences with on-campus food insecurity. So students could write letters to their college president asking for more help or saying that you're doing a good job. We also did a value analysis on the narratives from getting the idea of the personal or moral codes that the students have and how they assess food access and justice. From that analysis, we saw that there are certain values that were highlighted. So the first value was support. This is social support that related to food problems, such as getting help from your family, getting help from your organizations on campus and outside of campus. One of the examples of the narratives is my mom always packs healthy lunches for me. A sub-code that was very popular was Support Campus. This focuses on the support that we see on campuses such as pantry, organizations, and even staff help. And this was said, if I sign up for an appointment at the campus food pantry, my issues with meals won't be a problem. Another value was difficulties, and this just pertains to any difficulties someone could have that's food related. So infrastructure, education, finances, time could all be difficulties that the students face. And they were said, I am forced to spend more than $40 a week on food alone because of the overpricing in school. Difficulties help. This focuses on the health issues that's related to food insecurity, such as eating disorders, depression, anxiety, physical stuff as well, physical health. So we did a sentence by sentence analysis using the program Atlas. We found that the values were 11,939. Some of the more important values were support, which again we categorize as social support when related to food issues. And it went from 29.53 to 38.46 after the pandemic had started. This could be attributed to the support campus code value, which is again focusing on the organizations or the staff that can benefit help the students. This went from before the pandemic, 12.44%, to after the pandemic has started, 17.67%. Difficulties. Again, this acknowledges the difficulties around food insecurity, and this went from 16.55% and 21.57%. For difficulties health, this also relates more to, health or mental issues that's related to food insecurity, and this went up to 0.83% to 1.51%. So the things that we saw is that students were more likely after the pandemic to talk about the support groups that can help students for food insecurity, and also what can campuses do. This also relates to their knowledge on difficulties and understanding that there's financial, especially health difficulties that's related, as they talked about obesity, depression, anxiety, etc. So in conclusion, we analyzed community college students who were experiencing food insecurity from what they reported and how they wrote. We saw that 31% of students who were food insecure, so meaning 1/3 of our students were. And but we didn't see much in food insecurity overall from fall 2019 to fall of 2020. And we attributed that because a lot of students were forcibly pushed out of the pandemic, and so we didn't see much. However, we do see that after the pandemic have started, there are students who were more likely to talk about support from not just social support, but also campus support in organizations. We also do know that students were becoming more knowledgeable on the difficulties related to health on food-related issues. So thank you all for attending this talk. If you have any questions for us, or you could also email our principal investigator, Dr. Tanzina Ahmed. Our research team did publish a paper, A Developing Crisis in Hunger, in the Journal of Hunger, Environment, and Nutrition. If you would like a free PDF, just email our Dr. Tanzina, and she'll be happy to give it to you guys.
Can we ask a question?
Yes.
Have you reported back to your administration your results, and has it led to any policy changes on campus?
So as of right now, we haven't yet, but we are talking to, there's a program called Healthy Campus with Healthy CUNY, which focuses on mental and food insecurity as well. And so if we most definitely will submit our research paper to them, and we could further talk about policies.
That'll give you credibility with that.
Yeah.
And a related question is, do you have any idea on the other campuses for the CUNY system, the community college system? Any other interventions? Were they doing things around food security? Did you communicate across campuses? Or just
So from my understanding, it seems like each CUNY has different ways that they deal with food insecurity. Some schools were setting up these kind of drive-by pantries that students could come and just collect something real quick and be anonymous. Other schools were dropping off stuff at their houses. So it was kind of like they were doing their own separate things. I do think there wasn't much communication from all of CUNY, because we are a very interlocked school, but there wasn't much communication about this problem. So if you get a next pandemic, you have to communicate.
So, as do you have any data from fall of 2021, as the pandemic becomes an endemic and people start changing their attention habits? Is there now more food insecurity because people are less attention on it?
So for this research, we didn't really get some. I do think we have some stuff there for fall of 2021, but we didn't code it and put it for this paper.
We're still in the process
Yeah.
of coding that. So we just recently, we're wrapping it up and we sent it to our PI. So she's now kind of incorporating that data for the next journal.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the interpretation that more students in the low income brackets were pushed out after the pandemic. Did you see changes in income between pre and post pandemic? I know you showed a slide there, but I just can't remember what the data showed.
Let me go back.
That one, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, I don't.
A small percentage.
Yeah.
Small percentage, but I don't know if that's statistically, it doesn't look like it
No.
would reach statistical
I don't think we really looked at that as well on this for this paper.
I just would be curious, you know,
Right.
the percent of kids who dropped out after the pandemic and whether or not finances were the main driver there. You need to take care of family members, things like that. Thank you, this work is really interesting.
Oh, thank you so much. Any more questions? Good.